Díomh a cóide agus fáilte rais. Hello friends and welcome back to the Cray podcast. It's Elaine Nagul. I am Elaine Doyle and it is with deep, heartfelt gratitude that I welcome you back to this sacred space. How are you getting on? Yeah, I really hope everyone is keeping well at this beautiful, magical, as I've said this before, intense time on planet Earth. Yes, it's a beautiful sunny day here in Ireland, so I really hope to bring through some of that light in today's episode. Yeah, I just realised that I was speaking there for about 15 minutes and my microphone wasn't plugged in. So here we go again, surrendering and trusting that something else needs to come true. It's like in college, you know, when you I don't know if it ever happened to people, but you'd lose an essay or something and it's like, oh, sugar. And now there's a lot more surrender present. I'm like, oh, okay, let's sit down and do it again. So yes, before I get stuck into the musings from my heart today, just inviting us all to, take some long, slow, deep breaths here. The sacred element of air gives us what we need most to be alive, which is the breath. So we give thanks to the element of air, allowing us come deeper into our beautiful bodies that are the vessel for love. So allowing the breath to bring you deeper into your body, deeper into your heart space. Taking one of the most important journeys, I feel, which is from the head down into the depths of the heart. Tommy Macri-anish. I am in my heart now. And just allowing yourself to reside in this space while we sit together. Allowing your soul to receive that which it came here to receive. Knowing that you can receive that which resonates and leave the rest. So yes, here we are together again. Feels really good to be sitting down to record another episode for the Cray podcast, as it just really helps me to integrate and reflect on the different processes that I've been moving through, which is just a reminder for us all that that which helps us can also help others, and in helping others we are also helping and serving ourselves. I believe everybody could have a podcast. We all have so much beauty to share. So thank you for being here and receiving my heart musings and your support as always. It helps me to show up for myself, knowing that there's people out there waiting for an episode to come up. It's like, okay, come on, Elaine, this isn't about you, but this helps you. I'm a rising Pisces, North Node Pisces, Cancer Moon. There's a lot of water there. I could easily just not have any structure, but I need it. We all need the divine masculine structure as well. So thank you for helping me to create this space together. So yes, today's episode I feel is going to be, who knows what's going to come true. I feel like there's a lot that's been moving for me when I was living off grid on the West. And I would love to share some of those reflections, off grid living and deep solitude, and what medicine and gifts that brings us. Yeah, and I feel there might be some overlap from my last episode, so apologies if there is, but I'm also not apologizing because it obviously needs to be shared again. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what comes through today. So I'm going to start things off by reading out a quote that my friend sent me recently. It really resonated for the different processes that I'd went through while I was off grid. I don't know who it's by, but here it is. The magic you are looking for is in the work you are avoiding. So the magic you are looking for is in the work you are avoiding. Here we go. So, I might have said it in the last episode, but I spent 5 weeks up in East Clare on a beautiful, gorgeous piece of land called Awan an Ulia. Awan an Ulia, which means River of the Giant Deer. Yeah, friends of mine own it, and they were heading off to their homelands, which is the Netherlands, and yeah, I just was very guided to house sit for them when they were away. And off grid has been something that has been calling me for many, many years. I've always felt like it was a part of my dharma to live off grid, and in many different ways I've done that in different places, but not, yeah, you see, I suppose I haven't really. I mean, the term off grid to me now means something else, which I'll get to, but I like really enjoyed going camping for long periods, being on the land and not having electricity or ways to plug in my devices, and feeling a lot more connected. So in many ways I've experimented with it. Yeah, that's the word. I've experimented a lot with it over the past few years. I was always calling in somewhere to live, to rent even, that was off grid, but it didn't happen until this experience. Yeah, and I just want to share my experience that has less to do with the off grid and more probably the solitude that kind of lifestyle brought, which I'll share. You know, you go onto YouTube and off grid living. There's so many channels and videos that have millions and millions and millions of views, you know, of people living in forests or remote places, living off the land, away from, yeah, electricity poles or sewage systems, you know, having their own compost toilets. It's this kind of sovereignty I feel that it brings. And, well, there's many reasons which I'll get into. And I've always kind of wondered, what are people seeking when they're watching these videos? Why do we all have this dream? Not all have this dream, but have this dream of living a more sustainable life connected to the earth. And, you know, I feel like it's not that we necessarily have to live off grid. I think what we're seeking in that experience is more connection. And we feel like perhaps if we're off grid, we're going to feel more connected. And that we are also doing less harm to the planet. Because there is certain things, materials and resources that we use that pollute the environment. you know. I do believe that for millennia, for a long time, forever, the climate has naturally been changing. I do believe that. However, I do still think that there is things within our lifestyle that are not good for the rivers and the water and the land. So I think the off-grid lifestyle helps us to feel more that we're doing less harm to the earth. So my experience was being off-grid subtly, in practical ways, actually made me feel a lot more connected. And that quote I started off with, I will come back to that. It'll all make sense, hopefully. Maybe it won't, we'll see. So for example, now there is many different off-grid situations that you can live in. Sometimes people have absolutely no form of electricity. Sometimes people have lots of solar panels which gives them electricity, or a generator, which is a machine run by petrol or diesel that generates electricity. So every off-grid situation is very different. Where I was, there was some solar panels for hot water whenever it was sunny, which wasn't that often in East Clare, and there was a generator. So subtly, you know, it was a little bit more effort to charge my devices, right? My laptop, my phones. And that made me spend a lot less time on my devices. Now, this has nothing to do with off-grid really, but there was no phone signal, basically no phone signal on the land I was on. There was enough for me to do Zoom calls and WhatsApp, but that was it. And it was you had to kind of stick the phone up high to get signal. So it wasn't easy for me to be on WhatsApp or anything like that. And then you can't really have Wi-Fi because you have to plug in the Wi-Fi. They wouldn't have even been able to get Wi-Fi there. I think they would have had to get Starlink or something like that, but it wasn't possible because there wasn't internet, there wasn't electricity always readily available. So that, a mixture of not having signal and it wasn't easy to plug in devices, meant that I had to do the work I was avoiding. So I'm going to read out that quote again. The magic you are looking for is in the work you are avoiding. Not been able to outsource through my phone, as in outsource, I mean is look for connection outside of myself through my technology, through my phone and social media. I had to finally really do the inner. Not, I've been doing the inner work for years, but I really had to look at stuff that I was avoiding through distraction. And just to say, you know, like long term for me, because I work online, I don't think it's really possible to live off grid because I work online and I need it to be easily accessible to charge my laptop, which might be easily accessible if you had loads of solar panels. It's something I'll have to look into at a later point. But I suppose there's so much to do already in a day as a human that sometimes even having to go out to the shed and turn on the generator and all felt like it was too much. But that was a good thing. All these things were a really good thing, because they helped me to be less distracted by technology. Now, I actually have really good boundaries with my phone, I would say. But there's more. I'm seeing that there's more that's needed. Not everyone will need the amount of boundaries I need with my phone. I do because I'm very sensitive. I'm a Taurus. I'm a very hermit. A Taurus, yeah, hermit. You know, being the hermit is an archetype within me that I need, right? Because as a Taurus, I pick up all the energies around me, even online. It's very hard for me to process and have downloads if I'm always in contact with people, because as a Taurus I'm soaking it all in and it becomes exhausting. So off-grid suits me that way, where I actually can disconnect and reconnect with myself. However, I think, not however, and I feel like what we're really seeking in this off-grid dream is to be more connected, because our current lifestyles are still disconnecting us in some way. It's too easily available, the technology, which in many ways, if we're not very boundaried and very strict with it, can disconnect us. And how I would describe it is like, yeah, I've been thinking about this for a while. Me around technology is like an alcoholic around a house full of drink, right? Because I've come out of a lineage, like many of us have, of amnesia, of disconnection, of colonization, separation. We've come out of a dark time in humanity, where we're still in it, but we're coming out of it now. We're doing the healing work. We're coming back to our natural origins. That it's still very easy, I believe, to slip back into disconnection. And it's like the alcoholic constantly going into a pub or constantly having the cabinet full. It's like it's too much of a temptation having it there. And no matter, I have done an immense amount of work to feel connected, to be connected to nature and to my inner nature and to my heart. And within 5 minutes, I can slip back into disconnection very easily through scrolling, which can become a very unconscious habit. When you're engaging on social media in an unconscious way, it can lead to comparison, judgment, being very deeply immersed in other people's energies that are not in alignment. So becoming very disconnected just like that. And I said to my friend, it's like, I can do so many practices throughout the day to help me feel connected. And then one thing in the evening can unravel it all, and then I can spend ages trying to come back down into connection. When I say back down into my body, because I find a lot of the disconnection happens in the mind. As I said, this is just my experience. Other people can navigate that world and feel connected while doing it. I'm still very much learning how to do that in a connected way. And that's where the off-grid lifestyle supports the person to come into more connection, because those avenues for disconnection or distraction aren't as easily available. It's like the alcoholic has no alcohol around in the off-grid situation. He's on a retreat. He's in A&A. He's on a detox. Right? And also, and it was just in the specific place that I was, they had a cellar full of food that had been, a lot of it was preserved from last year's harvest, which I just haven't had the time to get around. So there was like, I'd go down with my little shopping basket and get whatever I needed in the cellar. And I realised as well, and that's not every off-grid homestead that's going to have that, but I realised that going into towns and shopping every couple of days was massively disconnecting me as well. Again, it can be a very connecting task. For me right now in my path, I find it very ungrounding. I struggle with cities and towns and a lot of people around. So there's certain things that, and I mean, I suppose that's, I do know other people that live off grid, and that's their kind of thing. They're self-sustainable. So going into towns and shops all the time isn't a part of their lifestyle. So that helped me feel a lot more connected to myself as well. And also, there was hens, goat's milk. There's a lot, I suppose when you're supplying your own food for yourself, that's connection as well. You're connected with the animals, with the land, with the earth. So there's many different things that definitely supported my healing connection path, living off grid. And as I reflect on that, I suppose the mastery is having those boundaries with myself, even if I'm not living off grid, which is what I've been experimenting with since I've come back to being within a non-off grid house right now. And I've struggled at times. But I've, in general been doing, it's been much the same. Sometimes I've went down a slippery path online and whoa, it's interesting to even witness that level of disconnection that I got to just from a little bit of scrolling. So that's learning in itself. I think the mastery is holding those boundaries within a non-off grid scenario for us all, really, because it's not going to be possible for us all to live off grid. And just on that, like, I know from living in a mobile home and our only source of heating was a stove that we needed an awful lot of wood just to heat one room for the winter and the spring and sometimes the summer, because the summer hasn't been great. If you can imagine, and the house I was staying in was a 6-bed house, how much wood one would need to heat a house, right? It's a lot. You can spend a lot of your time during the summer preparing wood for the winter. And I just realised that as much as I want to live off grid, not right now, there's just too much extra work involved. Right now there is enough human jobs to tend to. It's very important for me to have spaciousness for my spiritual practices, and not that these other things aren't spiritual practices, of course they are. That was the wrong way of phrasing it. To literally sit and be like meditating, praying, journaling, all these things are absolutely essential for me. Like sitting, meditating is one of my most important practices. So I feel like, and I know from growing my own vegetables, that there is a lot of different, it's not that it's a lot of work, it doesn't add up to that much time, but it's the consistency. The plants in a tunnel need to be watered every day. The plants needed, the vegetables need to be weeded. It's the consistency every single day, especially as a woman who's bleeding. It's like there's some days any of that is just too much. So I feel like a lot of people who are like wanting to get back on the land, wanting to live off grid, and the reason it hasn't manifested yet is because right now we're in a time of shedding and healing our nervous system, right? And needing to be a lot more and resting and recovering from a lifetime of disconnection. And for many generations, our ancestors have been very disconnected from the divinity that they are. They've been in survival mode because of trauma and ancestral, like experiences like colonization and the famine and different things like this worldwide. So, I've spent like 30 years of my life disconnected, not in my body, disassociating, disconnected, not connected to my cycle or my womb. So this is a time where I'm still unraveling, healing, needing to slow down and shedding. Is it a time for me to be the guardian of an off-grid home? No, it's too much. Even with someone else, I feel like it would be too much. Because men, they need time to rest and be as well, And I talked about this in one of my workshops last week, which was like, I was talking about how the elements help us come home to the frequency and vibration of love, and how to really tap into that frequency, we need to be in nature. So a lot of the time when I'm out in nature, people are walking, running, hiking, fishing, doing. And it's very rare where I go out that people are actually really being in nature, like meditating, sitting beside the trees meditating, or lying, or bathing in the rivers, not even swimming, just bathing. And for me, I believe that's, that's what our Druid ancestors did. And the priestesses, they did ceremony in nature, and ceremony is presence and connecting in with the divine. So coming into ceremony and ritual and beingness in nature is so important right now to help us come back to the connection. And when we're at a place where we're really, really, really connected, then it's easier to bring in more doing in nature. That's my experience. Some people are already there, like really, really present in their body, and that doing a lot in nature is really helping them come home to the divine. I'm not at that place yet. My nervous system isn't there yet. I am still at this place where I become slightly disconnected from my body when I have a lot to do. So my rule is, until I become more present in my body, I have to be minimal with what I do. And minimal of what I do, like especially if you have children. I don't have children yet, but as a human, there's a lot of different things we have to tend to, already, without adding more extra to that. And I feel like an off-grid lifestyle for me right now is there's just too many little extra bits that I just don't have the energy for. I'm not sure, and please comment below what the story is, how ethical oil heating is. Yeah. And if we take into consideration that the climate naturally changes, where are we with oil then, right? And the reason I bring it up is because like it's so nourishing to just be able to turn on the oil heating when it's cold, instead of always having to light a fire to warm a house up, and it can take a while, especially as a woman. When you're bleeding, you're in the depths of winter and it's absolutely freezing, and always having to bring in wood. And these are the kind of things that I think we're not thinking about when we're thinking about this off-grid sustainable lifestyle, that it mightn't always feel like the most nurturing, nourishing thing, especially for our wombs as women. So that's what I realised. And that I need an incredible amount of time to be still, to be in nature. And, my friend said to me, oh, it feels like you've had a real retreat while you've been here tending to the land. And I was like, this is actually more than I've done in a really long time. I mean, people probably go on retreat to experience the life that I live. And I say that as a means of inspiration, that even if we have children, because I've seen this play out, that there's still time to be, even with the children. I do think we're unraveling from that patriarchal, wounded masculine of that our success is linked to how much we do. And that can even happen in the spiritual lifestyle community, that it's always doing. And I think I spoke about it on my Instagram, which is like, years ago or even last year, I would be out harvesting all the plants in nature in the summer and bottling it and preserving it and making tinctures. And now I'm like, I've really pulled back again, because I'm in my body more now. I'm in my body. My body is like, no, I actually need rest. Harvesting one amount of elderflowers for tea is enough for this season. Like, oh my God, I burnt myself out even with spiritual practices, which I probably talked about in another episode. So as you can see, there's pluses and minuses to my experience off grid, really. And again, this is, and I know I probably say this is my personal experience. It's not the gospel, it's just my view and reflections on it. So yes, before I move on to the work that I've been avoiding, just seeing if there's anything more on the practicals of living off grid. Yeah. Um, as someone who's like recovering from multiple burnouts and fatigue and awakening and shedding and healing and ancestral trauma and all that, right? Um, and I feel like I'm always in the process at the moment, which is beautiful, beautiful. But having all that going on means that like the small job, like I need the small things to be a small job. And what I mean is like, I just need charging my laptop to be easy. You just plug it in and that's it, instead of having to like go off and turn on a generator. And sometimes my laptop wasn't charging with the generator. I just needed to be simple. And sometimes those little jobs felt like too much. I haven't opened the garage and things like that, right? Anyone recovering from burnout or who bleeds knows that sometimes, and really listens to their bleed and stops, knows that sometimes those things are just like too much when we're trying to feed ourselves and nourish ourselves and maybe look after other people as well. So I needed the simple jobs to be simple. And I felt like if also not having Wi-Fi or internet signal served me in so many ways, which I'll get to, but then it was like, what should take 5 minutes to upload could take an hour or two, or I'd have to drive to be able to do something, and that just wasn't practical at all. Then I was like, what should take 5 minutes is taking me hours. This is not a good time of my energy and my time, when I'm needing to reserve my energy to bring my adrenals back up after adrenal fatigue. So yeah, that really didn't feel nurturing at all for me in many ways. So yeah, I think when if we're on a path to not just creating this like sustainable lifestyle in the external, but for me it's about the sustainable lifestyle within, like, can we call it a sustainable lifestyle if it's actually burning us out within? No, I don't think so. I mean, my ancestors have been living off grid for a long time. Like, the electricity only came in what, I don't know, 1930s, 40s, maybe even later. And yeah, a lot of them were in jocks, heaps, survival mode. And they're like, girl, enjoy the luxuries, girl, enjoy it. Go and get the massage, go to the sauna, enjoy the luxuries, enjoy being able to plug your laptop in, My ancestors that I work with now are of the highest light, so they're always pushing me towards whatever feels most loving. So I suppose, that's a message, like, live a lifestyle that feels most loving and nurturing and sustainable to you within. And I think when we do that, that will help the earth, because we're not doing things from a place of excess. I'm not talking about, I don't need artificial lighting. I've not been using artificial lighting in my spaces for a long time. I really feel like artificial lighting dims our consciousness, affects our circadian rhythm. There's a really good book about it called Waking Up to the Dark, and yeah, I really don't agree with artificial lighting. I just live by candlelight, and it's very easy in the summer, but I also did it in the winter last year. So we don't need to use electricity in excess, I don't believe. I didn't miss anything, any electronic things like not hairdryer, like, this is a stupid example, washing machine or blenders or mixers. My cacao wasn't quite the same without blending, but there is hand whisks you can use. So I think the level, washing every day and all these electric devices, I didn't miss that at all. So a part of me is well able to technically live off grid, but it's the other work that entails that I'm not ready for yet, if that makes sense. And of course, like, I did have a gas cooker, so that made it very effortless and easy to cook and stuff. So yeah, doing things that are sustainable, that are not burning us out. I've seen this a lot in different communities where we're trying to have all of the lifestyle and skills of our ancestors, which is beautiful, and I love that, and I love working with raw materials and crafting, but sometimes that can burn us out too, making everything from scratch. And I just don't feel like that's what my ancestors really want from me. They're like, no, we had to do this because we'd no choice. There was no alternative to buy. Like, please nourish yourself and love yourself. And I suppose for me, my main mission is love, and so it has to be, every action is coming from a place of love and connection. And I did say that to my friend recently when I was talking about coming away from the off-grid lifestyle back into the grid, was every action I do now, I want, if it doesn't help me connect to God, source, creator, energy, to love, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And I was a bit naive at the time, because there's some things that maybe I don't find that connecting, but I have to do, like get my tax on my car or my insurance and things. And we can bring presence to these things, as Eckhart Tolle says, and not to resist them, and to enjoy them and to love them. But where I'm at in my path now, I still struggle to do them in deep connection. I'm just going to be completely honest, and presence. And I was in town yesterday and I was doing things I really didn't want to have to do, but I knew they had to be done. And I was resisting it and I was trying not to, but I couldn't help it. And I came home frazzled and I was like, do you know what? Let's just do some of these things online again anymore. And like, this thing that I had to do yesterday actually will probably never have to be done again in my life. It's done now. So it's like, I want to be the witch in the forest who never really has to go into a town. Like, I really do want to be that. And on a side note, when I was walking through Kilkenny City, which is my hometown, I'm home for a few days. Not home, I'm back on my ancestral lands. I need to be very careful. Home was within. Yeah, I seen an image of the first witch that was burned in Ireland for heresy. And I realised, maybe this is why I feel very disconnected in public places, or flight or fight mode, because that deep cellular memory of being burnt alive in public places is still in my body. And how, yeah, it just was that knowing, maybe this is why I don't like public places, because I've been burnt alive many lifetimes. Anyways, so who knows why we sometimes, don't like going into towns or stuff, but that's a whole other subject in itself. Yeah, for me, it's about what's really sustainable for our physical health. And I don't know about you, but I still need a lot of time to heal my nervous system. And I seen a quote on Instagram, it was going viral, which is, a successful life means a healthy nervous system. And I really believe that, because a healthy nervous system means that we are able to slip into rest and digest very easily. We're not in stress response, which is flight, fight, or freeze. And it is only through rest and digest that we can really connect with ourselves and with God. Because we're in a state of fear and anxiety, and we can't, that's the opposite of connection. And yeah, I'm in the midst of a really beautiful offering, journeying back to love. And we had a sharing circle last week, and a few of the women said, this has actually been a very somatic experience, somatic meaning in the body. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted. We can't connect with love and God from a place of the mind. We can't learn this stuff. We have to feel it in our bodies. Connection to love and the divine and God is felt within the heart. And that's where Jesus says the kingdom of God is within the heart. It's within us. And we can't, to birth the whole new earth is about bringing the consciousness of heaven into earth. And that's done through the body. So we must be, I feel, always doing things to help us feel connected and nurtured to our physical bodies. That's what's really important to keep sustainable. Not to be constantly doing things in the external, and then we're successful, and then we're, yeah, at peace because all these things are being done. No, we have to find that within through stillness, I believe. Yeah, feels good to be really reflecting on this time off grid. What's really sustainable for me and for all of us. So as well as all these different realizations about off-grid life and living and sustainability within and without, yeah, one of my most massive, how do I describe it, experiences or transformations while I was off-grid was the fact that I was in solitude after living with somebody for, well, I've been living with people for years, in my own little self unit, and this was a piece of land that was quite isolated. I spent a lot of time on my own, which over the years, before my most recent relationship, I was single for 10 years solid. I went traveling the world solo when I was, well, in 2015, which is nearly 10 years ago. So it's not something I've been running away from, but my soul has been always needing, was calling me towards deeper levels of solitude, because that's what I'm afraid of. And a lot of the time what we're afraid of is where a lot of magic lies. So I'm going to read out that quote again. The magic you are looking for is in the work you are avoiding. And many healers would say to me, you really need to embrace your solitude. It's really important for you. And, we don't need to live completely on our own in an isolated part of the world or country to find solitude. We can find it within living scenarios in different places, There's no rules with it, but I can see how my edge is living completely on my own in solitude. And then within the solitude, it's very different during your solitude, but you have your Wi-Fi on your phone and you can be always kind of feel connected in that way. But as I was saying, there just wasn't much internet at all, right? And this is where, oh my God. Oh, I probably talked about it a little bit in the last episode, Journeying Back to Love. I was really, really, really forced to not outsource connection. Okay, and I'm going to read out what I mean by that in this beautiful quote. Luckily, when I was in this house in Clare, I found a book in the library. The library in the house, they had a beautiful bookshelf of so many books, and Anam Cara by John O'Donoghue, which I have myself, but I didn't have it with me, and I haven't read it in years. And he's from Clare, so I was obviously tuning into his energy, right? And here it is. Okay. We cannot continue to seek outside ourselves for the things we need within. The blessings for which we hunger are not to be found in other places or people. These gifts can only be given to you by yourself, and they are at home at the heart of your own soul. This is what I'm talking about when I'm saying outsourcing. So I noticed I'd pick up my phone when I was feeling really disconnected, and then I realised I had no signal. So I was like, what am I seeking in this moment? I'm seeking connection, right? And how many times, and I in 2018, I had a blog, Wonder and Irish Colleen, and I remember it was the first time I wrote about giving up my phone. I was my higher self always knew, you're outsourcing with your phone here, give it up. I used to give it up for Lent when I was a teenager. I've always known that there was a real distorted relationship we could have with our phone, which was making us outsource when we really needed to go within. And even years later, I'm still finding patterns to where I'm doing it. Again, it's like the alcoholic with the alcohol. If it wasn't there, it would be fine, but it's there and it's bringing it back to this place of disconnection. And I might have mentioned it before, there's a beautiful silent retreat that I go to in Chalkbreed in Carlow, and you're not allowed your phone, and it's silent, days of silent meditation. And that's where I feel most connected to myself. That's where I feel close to God. When there isn't any distractions or outsourcing happening, and I'm literally just going silent into the magic and gold within my own heart. However, it's easy to be disciplined when we paid for a retreat and someone is guiding us through it and you're not allowed your phones. But bringing that into our day-to-day lives was brought up a lot for me, where I was like, okay, I can't keep using this device or this outsourcing or feeling really lonely and going, I'll just go and see my friends. And I'm not saying like we all need friends and family and community when we're feeling down and low. I suppose where I'm at my path is, it's like I have so many tools and resources and my own strong connection with God where I no longer really need to do that. I go to community to fill myself up even more, not to outsource, because I can't give it to myself. And I had this experience where I invited my friend over to the off-grid homestead. When I really tune in, it was because I was feeling lonely and isolated. And after they left, I felt like I was going to die. Like that real codependency energy, like I was bawling and crying and I was so upset. And I'm really grateful for that experience, because if we're entering relationship or connection from this place of I need you, outsourcing, it's going to end in tears. And this is why probably a lot of my relationships have ended in tears, because it was coming from this place of me outsourcing, my inner child feeling so rejected, so disconnected, so parched of love, that I was always outsourcing that love. And this is where it's getting juicy now. It's like, I would have shared it in one of my episodes last year. I think it was Divine Union and Love in the New Earth. And I met this man called Matthew, which means gift from God. Wow, really powerful. And when he looked into my eyes, it brought up so much stuff for me. And he said to me, when he was staring at me, he was like, how's your inner child? And I was like, she's in bits. She's really not good. Like, she's feeling really sad and unloved. And he said, don't attract love from that place. As in love from a man or a friend or whatever. Tend to love her yourself and then attract love. And that really landed. Like, it really landed at the time, but it really landed the last few weeks, because I was like, all right. When we go in search of love outside of ourselves, because we're not able to love ourselves, that's when it's going to possibly end in tears. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes that person helps you love yourself. My experience, single at 36, which is all divine and it's perfect and it's beautiful, and I'm in a relationship with myself and God and my own inner masculine, right? However, I really, really am excited to really come into a deeper, deeper, deeper love with myself. That's what this time in solitude was showing me. I can't keep outsourcing this, Elaine. Whether it's like outsourcing by having to go to a community gathering, having to be out in nature, having to have, interaction. It's actually not sustainable. He says we cannot continue to seek outside ourselves for the things we need within, because that will actually burn us out. It's not sustainable, because if you're wrecked or you're bleeding and you're feeling lonely and you're like, I have to go to this gathering because I can't live otherwise, I'm going to die. you're going to burn yourself out, which I have done. And I wrote a post about community starts with communing and coming into unity with our own soul first and our own heart first. This is where I'm at on my path, and it's just important for me to say I wouldn't be where I'm at on my path now only for community mirrored back to me my worth and how much I really needed to love myself. So I kind of have gone full circle here, where community helped me to get to where I am. I have community, I'll always be in community, but how I engage with community is becoming more sustainable and more healthy, where I'm not reliant on that, I'm not codependent on that. It's a more healthy reciprocal relationship, if that makes sense. And just to read some other quotes that I wrote down from Anna Cara about solitude. Solitude can be a homecoming to your own deepest belonging. Solitude is one of the most precious things to the human spirit. And to bring courage to your solitude, and you learn that you do not need to be afraid. And only in solitude can you sense and discover your own inner beauty. Yeah. I do believe that there is, I really agree with John O'Donoghue, I do believe that there is a homecoming there. And it's from that place that we really get to tap into the divinity within and fill our own selves up, source love from the infinite supply of love within our hearts, and then attract lovers and friends from that place. Sometimes it won't always work that way, and that's divine too, because they're mirroring, all the people in our lives are mirroring stuff back to us, right? As a healer, and I know there's many other women and men out there, that we have to work through all of this stuff before we meet our person or our land or our home, because then we've had to move through all the initiations to get there, rather than it just landing on our lap. So then we can help other people to get there. And some people, it does just land on their lap. They meet their lover at 17 and they grow together, they move through this together. For some of us, it's not like that. So if you're on that similar path to me, know that that's a beautiful gift for us to have to move through all these things, because then we'll be able to really be able to help other people to move through that. So it's not the same experience for everybody. This is, again, take what you want and leave the rest. So with that, this solitude, and I didn't write it down, but this chapter, it's on like page 120, around 120, 122 in Anam Cara. I've been reading this chapter a lot about solitude, right? And he talks about how when sometimes, or a lot of the time perhaps, depending on our experiences, when we go into solitude and into our hearts, it can feel like abandonment and it can feel like loneliness, right? But when we have the courage and we're not afraid to sit with that, underneath that then is this gold, which I've definitely experienced from meditating a lot, right? And even when we come into our heart space, you know, I've had clients say it's not easy for me to come into my heart. Yeah, because there's grief there, but we'll work on getting through the grief. We'll crack you wide open a little bit more, and then it'll be easier to come into your heart. So it's like, it's the iceberg thing, you know? The iceberg at the top is what can cause the destruction, but there's all this magic underneath it. Probably iceberg isn't the best analogy, but anyways, I'm sure you understand what I mean. There's a whole well underneath the pain. So maybe like a pearl or something. So what he says is, okay, so there's, initially it can feel like isolation and abandonment, but we have to have the courage to look at that. Because if we're not looking at that, that energy is attracting. It's the law of attraction. It's attracting more of that energy into our lives. So for me, like, my history has been, I've always felt rejected in relationships or abandoned. Yes, because where was I self-abandoning and rejecting my own solitude and my own pain within my solitude? Wow. You know? Where was I self-rejecting and self-abandoning? And when we stop self-abandoning, when we stop rejecting ourselves, we then really bring in people that love us in that way too. And that's been my experience over the past 10 years, 20 years, 15 years even. And I probably talked about this in another episode, which is the more healing work I've done, the more amazing people I have in my life, because they're reflecting back to me my own love and my own new states of consciousness. And I'm noticing now that this is becoming more subtle. That, okay, I have this amazing man in my life, but I'm still sensing that there's it's not union. It's not what I'm seeking. There's still not a rejection, but a rejection or abandoning here. Why is that? Okay, because that consciousness is still within me. I'm doing that to myself, and I'm attracting people who are doing it to me then. And even though they're never, and I suppose the more I come home to that, the more I realize nobody is ever rejecting me. Actually, it's just simply not in alignment. Simply not in alignment. It's not in our highest good for either of us to be in relationship together. So it never really is abandoning. But what is real is when I abandon myself. And an example of that is, I need to feel connected in this moment. I'm just going to pick up my phone and outsource. That's me self-abandoning. I need to be with my wounded inner child right now that's feeling separated or abandoned. Well, I feel like this is a long episode, but I'm going to keep going. And a beautiful woman, Anaya Sophia, she's now going by Alethea Sophia, really recommend her work. And she talks about the 5 wounds of love, the wounds that are keeping us separate from love, which are betrayal, judgment, separation, abandonment, and what's the last one? Let me just have a look. I've written it down somewhere. Denial. And how if we don't look at these wounds and heal them within, they'll come up in relationships anyways. You know, and when we're in relationship, it's a beautiful way to look at these wounds. But I feel like through solitude, we can really look at where these wounds lie within us. Okay, so I want to go on my phone, or I want to outsource. It's because I'm feeling separated and abandoned. How do I tend to that within? And just to speak into the courage that's needed, we get to these points in our life when we're ready. We end up spending time on our own a lot when we have the resources to do this. This is not, none of this is for the faint-hearted. This can be like really death-like experiences, meeting our core wounds. So there's no comparison here to when we should do things. Oh, I must go off and do that now. We do it when we're ready, because if we don't have the resources to deal with this trauma, it can actually really be traumatizing, and it can re-traumatize us having to look at these wounds without the tools available. And again, I was talking to some of my clients about this, which is like, we're not going to get into your core wounds until you have a very deep connection with the divine, because it is your soul, the light of your soul, your connection to God, your connection to your heart, that will actually help you overcome these wounds. And I was actually talking to my friend Clean about this. It was like, I think I did things backwards. Like, I went straight into the ancestral trauma and past life persecutions without having a solid connection with the divine. And a healer, and maybe I said this in the last episode, but a healer did say to me, like, focus on your connection with the earth and then go into these wounds, and know that your frequency always has the power to heal these things. So you know, our spiritual practices and our connections, that's what's most important, to really develop those before we do deep trauma work. That's my belief. Or, and have therapists and professional support and community and women's circles that can help us look at this. So that's really important to say. Yeah. And it's important for me to say I have in no way mastered this. I'm not quite where John O'Donoghue was with it. Or all these other spiritual teachers and leaders and ascended masters. Okay, obviously I'm meeting my edge. My edge is solitude, but like the next level of solitude. For those who know me know I've been spending a lot of time by myself for many, many years, probably a decade, but like I'm talking about the next level for me, my edge, right? And that comes back to the quote. I'm going to read it again because I do feel like it's really important. The magic you are looking for is in the work you are avoiding. So this magic of like my beloved and children and this life that I want is at the other. It's actually in the work I'm avoiding, which is following my heart's truest desires, being in solitude for a while. And it's at the other side of that these things are, because they're not. They're a result of the magic that I found within. And a friend of mine, Oliver, said this: attract things from the place of, how did he say it? When you found the kingdom of God within, then you attract things from that place. Instead of manifesting from a wounded place, find the kingdom of God within and manifest from that place. So all these things that I want in my life, they have to be attracted from a place of really deep peace within, where I'm not outsourcing. I'm not needing these things to bring me magic. I'm finding the magic within. And since I have, been initiated into more of my own love, like there's definitely, since I've really leaned into the solitude bit, there's so much more love in my life, in my heart. Like I'm waking up during the night feeling peaceful. I'd feel peaceful throughout the day and then wake up during the night and I'd be like, in bits emotionally. But there's been massive shifts, which I could be here for hours talking about. So it's like the things I want have to be attracted in from that place. Because I'm not here for a mediocre relationship. I'm not here to settle, right? I'm here to follow my heart's absolute truest desires and highest timeline, which I know a lot of you are. Yeah. So I'm meeting my edge as much as I can, and I'm also doing that in tandem with my nervous system. So I've come back to my ancestral lands to recuperate for a few days before I go back and embrace solitude again. So I'm doing it in a very nourishing way, instead of being like, right, I'm just gonna go off for 6 months on my own. I don't think I'd be emotionally stable if I was to do that. It would be too much. It would be too much trauma exposure at once. So again, do it in the most loving and nourishing way, whatever your edge is, whatever work you are avoiding, do it in a nurturing, nourishing way, if that makes sense. It's actually really, really important. And I think I talked about this in the last episode, is like, we don't always need to be emotionally stable. Sometimes we are going through a massive threshold in our life where our wounds are coming up and it's really difficult and we're on our edge. And I really believe that to be true. That's, like I was saying, like I'm so attached to feeling safe and peaceful. But sometimes, and John O'Donoghue says, sometimes difficulty is a friend of the soul, because through meeting our deepest wounds, through suffering and difficulty, our soul grows an immense amount. So it's not about being afraid of unraveling, right? And I think that was the massive shift for me while I was in Clare, which was like, I felt like I'm gonna die many times here. And in that moment, I've closed my eyes and I've self-sourced. And I realise now that anything is possible. Because in those moments, I didn't self-abandon. I didn't run away from myself. And I moved past that abandonment feeling and found the gold within. And there's just like a sovereignty and a strength that comes when you really start to source love from within and connection. And again, I know I have many experiences to go through that yet, and I can still see why there's parts of me that's still FEAR of it, in FEAR of it, and I'm moving past that. I'm removing all blockages that are stopping me from coming into love. I'm choosing love over fear. And also within that, as I was saying, there's periods in our life where we're going to feel like we're unraveling or we're emotionally unstable. It's very important to pull yourself back sometimes and just do something that makes you feel stable or at peace. For me, it was just coming back here for a few days, or just being in a women's circle, or telling your friend exactly what you're going through, having your therapist. So something that's going to pull you back, because if we get stuck in that pit of trauma, it can be really traumatic. So what I'm trying to get at is a balance here, balance of shadow work, and then just coming back into the divine, being by the river all day, or the water, or the sunshine, or whatever that is. Yeah, there's many different threads there. I'm just going to take a breath. Yeah, so the work that we are avoiding, so the magic you are looking for is in the work you are avoiding. The work you are avoiding will be different. It'll be different for each person. So for some people, solitude can be their safety zone, and being in community is what they're avoiding. I definitely actually have friends like that I'm like, oh, community is going to bring you into so much magic and reflect back your wounds. Solitude is like that for me, but it can be the opposite for someone else. So maybe just tuning in this moment. Yeah, what is it, what work is it that you're avoiding? What is your soul really, really ready to do? What leap is it ready to make? And knowing that's where so much magic resides, Sometimes the more fear, the more magic that's going to be on the other side of it. And it's the ego that's afraid, but the soul and the heart is so ready. It's so ready. And for me, it's like knowing that I have everything within me to do this work that I'm avoiding. I actually have it all. If I didn't, it wouldn't be in my psyche to know I wanted to do it if I didn't have everything it takes. So it's like this consciousness of courage, faith, love, trust in the divine, that God is with you throughout all these initiations, thresholds, different difficulties and sufferings, because God is always with you, because these initiations are helping you to raise your consciousness, helping you come back to love. So yeah, I mean, it's probably another episode in itself, but I've been really in that solitude. I nearly wrote a whole book on journaling, like hundreds of pages of journaling I've done. Like, it's so much, like, journaling is so important for me. And I've had to rewire my brain and really rid myself of some of these limited belief systems that aren't love, and rewiring them with, like, I am worthy, I am love, I have what it takes, I have faith in God, I trust the universe's plan for me, I trust I'm well able for this, I can do this. coming back to psychological basics of ridding ourselves of everything that is limiting us from returning to the truth of who we are, which is love and power and sovereignty. We no longer need to distract and outsource from others. We no longer need to be the disconnected human. Mm. So yeah, I could keep going, but I think that's definitely enough. That's loads. Yeah, if you're still here, thank you for your presence and support. Yeah, and just to sum up, maybe what I've talked about is like, the advantages and disadvantages of off-grid living and how it can connect us. And perhaps what we're really seeking with this off-grid lifestyle is more connection to ourselves, nature, and God, and how we can do that even within a non-off-grid situation, by having solid boundaries with ourselves, by prioritizing our spiritual practices and meditations and time in nature, and putting down the phone and picking up our life, and actually sourcing from within. No longer distracting ourselves, no longer, as I'm going to say it again, outsourcing. Coming into really deeper connection. Is this scrolling, is this activity I'm about to do, is it really going to help me connect, or is it going to further disconnect me? Am I unraveling from all the goodness I've done today? And when we're talking about sustainable living, the most sustainable type of living, I believe, is nourishing our heart with love and our body with deep nurturing nourishment. Whatever brings you that is the most sustainable lifestyle. And I believe when we really live in our hearts, that's what will heal the planet. We're really connected. And how for me this last while, solitude away from my phone has brought an absolute metamorphosis. Like, I feel completely so transformed and changed by just some simple practices of not outsourcing and coming home to both the pain and the power and the divinity within. Yeah. So Sin é Accordia, I think that's it for now. I will be back soon with more reflections and musings at this. I feel like I'm in the midst of a very transformational part of my life where I'm back solo again, and it's like me and spirit coming into deeper union, because this divine union that I seek is actually within, and it's with me and God. And yeah, I just hope that some of those musings and reflections and processes in some way have resonated or helped you. Yeah, and please feel free to leave some comments or questions below. And yeah, I'm sending you so much love from the sacred lands of Ireland, and deep, deep blessings for your path, your initiations, and your mission and journey in this lifetime. Yeah, slán agus beannacht, bye and blessings, and I'll see you all again soon. Slán, slán.